Have you ever wondered what makes some people seem astonishingly attractive? And I don't just mean beautiful, I mean so intoxicating that they become addictive. In fact, even perfectly ordinary people can sometimes trigger extraordinary infatuation. They have some sort of X factor that seems almost magic or uncanny. Well, what is it? What is it about them, or is it actually about us? Well, in fact, it's a bit of both. There's a special kind of alchemy that can sometimes take place between people and drive us into a state of limerence, an intense form of obsessive infatuation, a kind of behavioral addiction. Limerence is a special, highly personalized form of attraction, and in this video I'm going to break down what causes it. Hi, my name is Tom Bellamy and I'm a neuroscientist and writer, and I blog all about limerence at livingwithlimerence.com. I'm also the author of the forthcoming book Smitten, that explains how modern neuroscience can help us make sense of limerence and obsessive infatuation and how to recover from it. Right, let's analyze what makes someone super attractive. Why are people attractive? Well, obviously that's a question that's been studied a lot, and there are a few universal factors that have been identified. So things like visual symmetry or secondary sexual characteristics that are indicative of masculinity or femininity, so things like jawline or hip to waist ratio. Actually, one of the biggest predictors for beauty is averageness. So if you take a composite of many faces and average it in the computer, most people will find that average face more attractive than actual individual faces of real people. So this kind of approach to understanding attraction is a kind of evolutionary psychology argument. So things like reproductive fitness or assortative mating or phenotype matching or complementary immune markers. So these are all terms in trying to understand what helps us select one mate over another. And clearly that's all important and correct, but it must be incomplete. Our personal experience of attraction tends to be more idiosyncratic, more individual. And when it comes to limerence in particular, it's not a universal thing. So limerence starts with what's called the glimmer. So this moment of recognition that another person is especially romantically attractive. They have some kind of power or potency that stimulates desire in you. We meet a lot of attractive people in our lives, but only some of them are able to trigger that limerent glimmer in us. And those people, although they seem wildly attractive to us, can be totally dull to other people. So they are special, but crucially, they're special to us. And I think this concept is well explained by a quote from the Living with Limerence site. So this was a commenter who left a message saying, "I was fascinated by how ordinary she was and how a lot of her interests were boring to people. It just made her all the more adorable, and I couldn't figure out how to express this to other people. They just couldn't understand her appeal." So I think that captures this concept that there's something about them that triggers something in us. I think we need to understand both of those levels in order to understand what makes some people so addictive. So starting with us, what factors are there within us that make some people so attractive? Well, there's going to be an awful lot of influences, and most of them lie in our past. So there's this concept of sexual imprinting, which is the idea that through key moments in childhood, puberty and adolescence, the adults that are around us become role models, essentially, for figures of manhood or womanhood, and what makes somebody therefore a potentially attractive mate. So there's going to be a huge range of factors contributing to this. It might be people's appearance or their personality traits, something like their scent, or it might be actual formative experiences that you have. So maybe early romantic experiences that were positive might make the person that you had with them become a kind of template for a desirable mate, whereas early romantic experiences that were negative might put you off a particular type of person. Now, we're probably never going to be able to disentangle everything that happened in our past to influence our development of a romantic sensibility. But the overall consequence is that we will have a kind of subconscious limerence avatar, a kind of template for the kinds of people that trigger our limerence circuits and make us feel the glimmer. So they match to our internalized version of what a desirable mate is. There's actually a concept from behavioral science that I think is really valuable for understanding this. And it's the idea of what's called a supernormal stimulus. So in studying behavior, scientists often find particular cues or particular stimuli that can provoke a really exaggerated response. So the classic example of this comes from stickleback fish, and a scientist known as Nico Tinbergen, who ultimately won the Nobel Prize for his research. And he found that stickleback fish, male stickleback fish, have a kind of built-in aggression response. So if they see another male, they will attack. Now, what Tinbergen found was that the actual stimulus that they were responding to was the red belly of the male stickleback fish. And he could develop just a wooden model, a crude wooden model of a stickleback with a very bright red belly. And the fish would attack this with great ferocity, far more than they would an ordinary stickleback. So this developed the idea of a supernormal stimulus. You know, our neural circuits are evolved. They're not intelligently designed. What that means is there's going to be imperfections and instabilities built into them. And sometimes we can be exposed to a stimulus that will drive our neural circuits into a state of kind of hyperactivation. And so my argument is that limerent objects are a supernormal stimulus. They're a supernormal romantic stimulus. Something about them hyperactivates our reward circuits, drives us into the mental state of limerence, and makes them seem extraordinarily attractive to us. Okay, so that's what's going on in our heads as limerence. What about the behavior of the other person? What is it about them that makes them so attractive? So the simplest level, of course, is that they are a match to your limerent avatar. They provoke the glimmer in you, but there will be some behaviors that make it more likely that limerence will deepen. So some people do seem to be, shall we say, common limerent objects. They are able to provoke limerence in a lot of people. And there are some behaviors that will contribute to the development of limerence. Two of the strongest are flirting and sending mixed messages. So if we start with flirting, people who flirt often have different motives. So sometimes flirting's just sport, so people feel it's just fun, it adds some spice to life and it kind of livens up social situations. Other times it's less innocuous, and the people that are flirting are trying to provoke a response. They're trying to probe whether or not you are potentially interested in them. But overall, flirting is certainly suggestive of romantic or sexual interest, and that provides hope in the limerent. So one of the most powerful amplifiers of limerence is hope. Hope of reciprocation of romantic interest. And clearly flirting is going to give limerence that sense of hope. And in actual fact, flirting itself can be a trigger for the glimmer. So many limerents do report that sensing that the other person was romantically interested in them is what started the limerent process developing. Okay, perhaps the most full-on version of flirting is something that's known in psychology as love bombing. So to give the definition, love bombing is the action or practice of lavishing somebody with attention or affection, especially in order to influence or manipulate them. So love bombing is exaggerated praise, exaggerated declarations of affection or admiration. And this might not actually be declarations of love explicitly, it might be just declarations of closeness, of a sense of connection or intimacy. So it may be saying things like, oh, you're so easy to talk to, or nobody else has made them feel this safe or this special or this happy. So it may not necessarily be overtly romantic, but it's a sense that they've really seen you and that they really value you. Now, some people will just temperamentally be very suspicious of love bombing. They will think, why, this is a bit over the top. What's this person trying to do? Why are they, and they will assume that it's manipulative. Other people will find it hard to resist. They will get giddy with the flattery. And ultimately, that love bombing can provoke the belief in a developing romantic relationship that ends up getting the limerent hooked on this other person. Okay, so the second big behavioral factor for deepening limerence is sending mixed messages. And combined with love bombing, this can be a very powerful combination. So by mixed messages, I mean ambiguous statements that suggest romantic interest, but also the presence of some barrier or some complication that means that things aren't simple. So it would be statements like, you should be careful, I'm trouble, or things are just really complicated for me right now, or if only we'd met in another life. Clearly hints of interest, but confusing for the limerent. And mixed messages might not just be spoken, it may also be about behavior. So things like the person seeming to be really enthusiastic about getting together, but then missing the appointment, or seeming very hot sometimes that you meet and lively and excited, but other times cold and distant and not wanting to engage. Or perhaps they behave very differently when you're together in private, just the two of you, versus when you're together in public with other people around. And the key factor in mixed messages is uncertainty. So the limerent can't be sure about the strength of the connection and the strength of the attraction from the person that they're becoming limerent for. So people that send mixed messages are essentially behaving like human slot machines. So for a long time, psychologists have known that one of the most powerful ways of reinforcing behavior is with what's called intermittent reward. So for a slot machine, the idea is to get somebody addicted to gambling is that early on they give out a big prize associated with a lot of stimulus, kind of arousal of flashing lights and rattling coins, but then later payouts become less frequent and unpredictable. And that makes it impossible to understand how what you're doing is linked to the reward, because it's essentially random. So in the context of limerence, what that would mean is that sometimes when you're with this other person, they seem very warm, they seem very excited, and that's very rewarding. You think, wow, yeah, we're making a connection, this is going really well. Other times when you're with them, they seem cold or they seem distant, and you don't know what's changed. You don't know what you've done that's different, that's provoked this change in response to them. And that keeps you guessing. It keeps you questioning, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? And so you never feel secure in their affections. And that kind of second guessing, constant analysis and rumination keeps them central in your mind and drives you into an addictive spiral where you're constantly trying to second guess what they're doing and constantly thinking about them. Those two behaviours are the biggest reinforcers of limerence, and sometimes they are used by manipulative people deliberately. So they will trawl to try and hook people with their flirting. If they sense that they've got this person interested, they will then love bomb them, but combine that with mixed messages in order to really hook them. Occasionally they will then reinforce that connection by giving a lot of focused positive attention in a way that just confuses and disorients the limerent but keeps them interested. Clearly, if you recognize that pattern of behavior in somebody else, you should avoid those people. But to be charitable, sometimes that kind of behavior is completely unconscious on the other person's part. So maybe they are just following their own unconscious drives from all of the formative experiences that happened in their past, and they're looking for validation of their own attractiveness by their ability to provoke love in another person. If it's happening to you though, that's small consolation, because it's still your heart that's getting broken. Okay, so the last concept that I want to cover is the idea of archetypes. So some people seem like they almost belong in a story. They fit a powerful archetype. So things like the damsel in distress, or the tortured soul, you know, these people that need to be rescued by your undying love, or the bad boy or bad girl, the temptress, maybe the free spirit, the enlightened guru. So these people, if they fit that kind of archetype, can be very powerful because we think in stories. So psychologically, stories have a very powerful impact on us, and that can make these people seem oddly familiar and very appealing. And it's because we recognize them from all the stories that we absorb over the course of our lives. Now, I think this concept is actually very powerful, but this video is already long, so I'm going to devote an entire video to analyzing romantic archetypes later on. I just wanted to bring it up as another factor in why some people can seem curiously addictive. Okay, so that's a lot of factors to consider in why some people are so attractive to you and how their behavior can deepen limerence. But what's the value in knowing this? Why is it worth understanding these factors? Well, it's very useful to you to try and find patterns in past limerent crushes that will give you a clue as to what it is that triggers that limerent glimmer within you. That helps you anticipate the kind of people that you will be attracted to and that you are therefore potentially vulnerable to. Now, it may be that your limerent triggers are completely neutral. It may be something like a particular hair colour, like redheads or brunettes. It might be about particular personality quirks, so maybe a dry sense of humour, something like that. And that obviously is fine because that's not going to have any impact on a potential long-term relationship that you might form with this person. However, sometimes triggers for the glimmer can be troublesome. So if you realize over time that you've repeatedly become limerent for people who are unavailable, or who treat you badly, or who push boundaries and break rules and kind of have this transgressive drive within them, it's quite likely that those people are going to be poor prospects for a stable, loving, long-term relationship. If that is what you are looking for in life, then you need to start treating the glimmer as more of a warning sign than a sign of excitement and of romantic possibility. So to plan the purposeful response for what happens the next time you experience limerence, it's really worth doing the work of understanding what your own triggers are and trying to find patterns in previous experiences that will let you understand yourself better. So there are the factors that contribute to who you become limerent for and why, but limerence isn't an all or nothing effect. It takes time to progress. Now, if you're interested in the 5 different phases of limerence and what causes us to move through them, take a look at this video. So there should be a card on the screen somewhere and a link below, and that will tell you everything that you need to know about the factors that drive limerence forwards. Okay, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.